Hey Mixers, welcome back to another NFL preseason video. Obviously, we don't have any preseason games until later this week, but we're going to go through and look at all of the preseason games that were just played, and I'll give you my takeaways from these games, mostly from a betting perspective, maybe a little bit from a fantasy football perspective as well, and we'll try to ignore all the information that I just don't care about. All right, so let's start with the Colts at the Ravens. It was kind of, it sucked obviously that Anthony Richardson left the game with an injury early. We didn't get a good look at him. He will be, starting in the second game and will probably play probably the whole first half. I don't know if we see Daniel Jones at all. It might just be an Anthony Richardson first half, Riley Leonard second half. But all of these quarterbacks, I was not impressed with any of them. Daniel Jones obviously played the best. He has the most NFL experience. Anthony Richardson, arguably has the best arm. But I wasn't too impressed with any of them. They didn't have a whole lot of pass catchers out there. Obviously, none from the starting lineup other than Tyler Warren and Adonai Mitchell, who both caught a couple of passes each and were able to have pretty good catches on those. And then the running backs, they really shared the ball around and they ran the ball pretty well. Obviously, the quarterbacks were running as well. Riley Leonard ran the most. On the Baltimore side of the ball, I don't care about any of it. The only thing, we weren't seeing any starters for the Ravens, except Keaton Mitchell, not really a starter, but he has always been a standout for the past couple of years, and he had a great game. So that's just something to note, but we expected that. So moving on to the Eagles and the Bengals game, based on the Vegas lines we were getting, we were expecting Tanner McKee to start and play the whole first half, which he had a great game. So we kind of expected that from him. I was expecting him to be great. He was fantastic. He has stepped in for Jalen Hurts before. The one surprise for me, Dorian Thompson-Robinson was okay. He's been good in the preseason for the past couple of years. Kyle McCord, who I was expecting to get a little bit more play time, like an entire quarter, he got a little bit less than a quarter, about 11 minutes of play or so, and he played horribly. So I would look for the Eagles to maybe feature him a little bit more in the upcoming games so that they can get a better look at him and see what he can and can't do. I expect Tanner McKee to play less, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Kyle McCord to play a bit more so that they can get those looks. So we may go back to Kyle McCord. We lost a bet on his over passing yards. I think it was pretty low, like 40 or something like that, but he only had 8. So I expect that we'll probably be going back to that line. And then on the rushing and receiving side for the Eagles, nothing really stands out to me. On the other side of the ball, on the Bengals, I was looking at Taj Brooks, the rookie that they brought in, the rookie running back, because I don't care what the coaches say. Chase Brown is not going to carry the ball every single time like he did last year. They cut Zach Moss after drafting Taj Brooks. So what that means to me is that they like this guy a lot. He did not clear his line. His line was 29.5. He only had 26. The starters played more than we thought they would, or at least me. I thought they'd play maybe the first 2 drives, and that would be it. And they played a lot more than that. So I would think maybe we can go back to Taj Brooks if the Bengals are going to play a little bit less. But the coach said that they're going to play the same amount. So we'll look at what happens in the second game, and then we may go back to him in the third game. All right, for the Raiders and the Seattle Seahawks, I was not impressed by any of the Raiders quarterbacks. Cam Miller played good, but he's going to be a nothing in the NFL, as far as I'm concerned. Drew Lock and Jalen Milroe, just okay. Nothing impressive for me there other than Jalen Milroe's rushing ability, which we already knew he was a rushing quarterback, so we were expecting that. The big standout for me for betting purposes is George Holani, who is an undrafted running back that they picked up last year, and who has been great in the preseason last year and this year as well. He was fantastic. So we may need to continue to go back to him because he is not expected to, fight for a job in the starting lineup at any point. So they are going to give him plenty of work in the preseason. Damian Martinez, who we bet on, was horrible. He had 6 carries for 10 yards, which is less than 2 yards per carry. He was terrible. And he is expected to be kind of the WR3 behind Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and he is kind of just a bruiser. So I expect him, especially after this game, they may use him only sparingly as like a goal line back. If Charbonnet were to get hurt and Kenneth Walker were to get hurt, I don't think Damian Martinez would necessarily be handed the starting role. I think someone else might get the job. They would probably bring someone else in. and Damian Martinez's role would still be pretty limited. So I think he has a lot to prove, and I'm not sure if he can, because this was the team to prove it against. I mean, it was a soft matchup for both teams, and he was not able to do anything. So that's all I have from that game. The Lions and the Falcons, obviously that game did not completely finish. Easton Stick obviously played well, but we expected that. He has always played well in the preseason. Not as good in the regular season when he had to step in for Justin Herbert a couple times. And he didn't play well. He did not rush at all. I think the Atlanta Falcons coaching staff told him not to rush under any circumstances, because has rushed in every preseason game, every regular season game. He's a running quarterback, and he did not run at all. So I think he was told not to do that. But he did have a good day passing. And then on the other side of the ball, Kyle Allen and Hendon Hooker are technically in a quarterback feud, for that backup role. I thought after the Hall of Fame game, and then just in general, because we have some data on Hendon Hooker going back to last year's preseason, that Kyle Allen was like already slotted for that backup role, and that there's no way Hendon Hooker could take it from him. We bet on Kyle Allen in this game, and that cashed easily. So yeah, I think it's Kyle Allen's job, and Hendon Hooker is going to have a lot to prove. I think that we're going to continue to see them, one half for Kyle Allen, one half for Hendon Hooker. And if Hendon Hooker plays in the first half, that's tough if he's going to be facing like ones on the other side of the ball, even for just a quarter or a couple of drives. That's going to be tough for him. So I think we may want to target the second half quarterback on the Lions, regardless of who that is. We want to kind of look at their lines when they're having a little bit of a softer matchup. And then for Detroit, I was impressed with the receiving. Even though the quarterbacks didn't play that well, they were able to spread the ball around, and those receivers were able to catch those balls and get some pretty decent yardage out of it. Isaac Tesla was great again. That's the second game in a row. And then Tom Kennedy, I thought, was fine. So I think what this means for the Lions is that they do have some pretty good depth at wide receiver. And Jared Goff is obviously a much better passer than either of these two quarterbacks. On the Atlanta side of the ball, they weren't starting any starters. The only person I was considering betting on, which I didn't, was Nick Nash, the rookie wide receiver, and he played well. He caught 3 passes for 35 yards, but the Falcons are so deep at wide receiver with their starters that I just don't think Nick Nash sees the field this year at all. But he might be someone to look at in the preseason if they continue not to play their starters, which is what I expect. And then the Cleveland Browns at the Carolina Panthers, obviously, I told everyone to bet on Shedeur Sanders. I didn't bet on his yardage. I just bet on his touchdowns, and he showed up for me. He is a good passer. He is not as good under pressure, which he wasn't pressured at all. So that is part of the problem here, is that we didn't get to see him under pressure much and how he would react from that. So obviously, he has a great arm, and it's very accurate, and I felt like he showed that. He had some really good throws that were right on target. So I expected that out of him, and I think that he will continue to play well in the preseason. They are going to give a look to Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, which I think they should. But right from the beginning, I've always said I think this is Shedeur Sanders' job to win. Like, I think he can win the backup job, and I still believe that. I think Kenny Pickett will not be on this team when September rolls around. And then on the rushing side of the ball, the only person I was interested in was Dylan Sampson on the Browns. He only had 2 carries for 6 yards. What that tells me is, they might expect him to be their week 1 starter. We still don't know what the Quinshon Judkins stuff going on, what's going to happen here. But they're clearly not wanting him injured at all. So I expect him to continue to get very, very limited work because he obviously could have had a really good day against the Carolina Panthers, in my opinion, just on a talent standpoint. And they clearly held him back when they could have given him more carries. So they don't want him hurt. I think that means, that he is being considered for a starting role week 1. And then on the Carolina side of the ball, the big thing I care about here is that even with some pretty bad quarterback play from Andy Dalton, which is kind of weird, I wasn't expecting that. Bryce Young played better, and then Andy Dalton did not play well, but the receivers played well. So they were able to do a lot with what they were given. And Tetairoa McMillan looked great again. They also were able to pass to some of the running backs, and they were able to do great. I think that the Panthers are going to be a lot better this year. They have actually a really good offensive line. They still don't have a defense, so that's going to be a big problem. But for fantasy purposes, that means high totals and overs on player props. So we are going to continue to look at them and continue to bet them. We cashed on Tetairoa McMillan it must have been in this game because he's only played the one game. So yeah, we did bet on him and that did cash for us. And then the Washington Commanders and the Patriots, I have no takeaways from this game. Both teams have horrible defenses as far as like their 2s and 3s go. They have, and especially Washington, they have no depth at all. So I expected this to be a high scoring game, and it was. The only thing that I might take a look at here is Travion Henderson obviously had that awesome touchdown return. We expected him to be good. So I know he's going to move up draft boards in fantasy football, but I was already taking him, in the 4th round, and I think that's where he deserves to go. Ramondre is going to fumble this job away. We know that. And then they brought in Cordarrelle Patterson to be the goal line back. So yes, Travion Henderson is going to win you your fantasy football leagues this year in the second half of the season. He's not going to have like a bell cow role in the first part of the year, and he never will probably have that kind of a bell cow role, but he is going to win you fantasy leagues later in the season during the fantasy football playoffs. All right, moving on to the Giants and the Bills. This game I did like to watch. I watched pretty much this whole game. All 4 of the Giants quarterbacks played really well, so that doesn't really help with their quarterback battle. But what that does mean is that we can expect them to continue to pass because they want to see which of these quarterbacks, like what the order here is going to be. So I expect to continue to see a lot of passing and not a lot of rushing, although Cam Scatterbu will get a look when he is healthy and on the field. He'll probably get a little bit of a look, but I expect them to mostly pass. And so that's going to be good for the Giants' passing lines. It's also going to be good for the receivers' lines. So we always want to look at that every week, probably from now on. And I did bet on Jackson Dart, and he did come through for me. Buffalo, they also played really well, and they are in a very fierce quarterback competition. So that's another reason why this game went so far over the total, is that both the quarterbacks on both sides of the ball were in a huge quarterback competition. So Mitch Trubisky played pretty well. Mike White played pretty well. I don't know who I liked better, honestly. So if I was the coach, I would just say, I'd just throw him out there again and say, I need to see more. So I do expect Shane to get some work, the 3rd string quarterback, or well, I guess he's the 4th string quarterback if we're not talking about Josh Allen. And I wasn't impressed with him at all. But the other 2 I was kind of impressed with. And then as far as their rushing goes, it's the same story. So we bet under on Frank Gore Jr.'s rushing yards, and that did hit for us because I just expected them to be passing the whole time due to that quarterback battle. So these are 2 teams that we're really going to want to chase overs for their wide receivers and probably for the quarterbacks as well. All right, the Vikings and the Texans. Nothing on the Texans side of the ball. I don't care about any of the players that they threw out there. Daria Gumbawale played okay for, at the running back position. Woody Marks didn't really get a look, I felt like, so he might get a little bit more of a look. What I was a little bit annoyed with is that they had Jalen Knoll out there, their rookie slot receiver, and he didn't get a lot of looks. So John Mechie got a lot of looks, and I was not expecting that. I definitely expected that to be the opposite because John Mechie is the veteran and Jalen Knoll is the rookie. But what that tells me is that they want Jalen Knoll to start pretty much right away over John Mechie. He's still going to be behind Christian Kirk, though, on that depth chart for the slot role. I don't know if we're going to get to see Jalen Knoll, which is a little bit sad, I think. But I think we could target some of the tight ends on the Texans team in the future. And then for the Vikings, they didn't show us a lot, but they played pretty well and just tried to be. They didn't do anything too tricky. They didn't do anything crazy. JJ played really well. Max Brosmer played pretty well. Sam Howell played pretty well. Rippon didn't play well, which is kind of uncharacteristic of him. He actually has been playing okay in the preseason in years past. And then as far as the rushing goes, don't care about that. The receiving here, I was not expecting Jordan Addison to play, which was just my mistake. I just didn't look into it. I assumed with the suspension that he wouldn't be playing in the preseason. But that was not the case. And so I had bet on Jalen Naylor, who only got 1 look. But I do expect Jordan Addison to not have a prominent role. And so we might go back to Jalen Naylor in the future. All right, the Rams and the Cowboys. We expected Stetson Bennett to pretty much play the whole game, and that is what he did. So I think that you can count on Sean McVay will never play his starters in the preseason. There was a little bit of a running back battle. So that was the interesting thing on the Rams side of the ball. So we were all wondering, who's going to get the RB2 role. Is it going to be Blake Corum, or is it going to be their new rookie, Jarquez Hunter? Just based on volume that Jarquez Hunter got, which was a lot, I think we're expecting that, Blake Corum probably will retain that RB2 role. And so I would expect Blake Corum's carries to go down and Jarquez Hunter's carries to stay about the same. So I think Jarquez Hunter could be someone that we target. I would not be targeting Blake Corum in the future. And then I wouldn't target anyone on the Cowboys other than potentially Phil Maffa, the running back. He is going to get a lot of work. I don't know. I don't think we're going to see any of the other running backs for Dallas, like Javonte Williams and things like that. But if we do, I still like Phil Maffa. I think he's going to get the bulk of the carries, especially later in the game. All right, moving on to the Steelers and Jaguars. I was impressed actually with Skylar Thompson because even though he's a veteran and we expect him to have some experience in the NFL, he's not good. So I was actually impressed with him. And then Mason Rudolph has played for Mike Tomlin before. I didn't expect him to be as good as he was, but I did expect him to be good. So the quarterbacks performed above expectations for me for the Steelers. They did not rush the ball very much. Caleb Johnson did get 8 carries, which was more than I thought he would get. So maybe he gets a little bit more, not a little bit more, but the same amount kind of throughout the preseason. They do want to acclimate him to the NFL, and I think that he is acclimating to the NFL pretty well. The pass catchers, I don't have anything to say about. There are battles going on here, though, because they don't have depth at wide receiver. So some of these guys are going to have to start. And so I would probably look to continue targeting the Steelers quarterbacks for passing because Mike Tomlin needs a look at these wide receivers. And then for the Jacksonville side of the ball, Nick Mullins was horrible. I did not like watching that. He kind of redeemed himself a little bit later on, but he started off so badly. In fact, I wasn't impressed with any of the Jacksonville quarterbacks, including Trevor Lawrence. I wasn't impressed with him as well. So the only thing I was looking at in this game is I had a bet on Bashal Tutin. He did not quite get there, but he was used in a pass catching role quite often, not just one catch here. He ended up catching, where is he? Right here. He caught 2 passes for 16 yards, and then he also took 6 carries for 24 yards. He played he played a lot, like almost a half of football. And then Tank Bigsby also got his looks as well. And I expect that to continue for all 3 of those running backs to be on the field. And so I want to continue targeting those spots. And then the Buccaneers and the Titans, Cam Ward played great. I was impressed, but it was obviously short. So we didn't get a lot of look at him. And he wanted to play more, and I think he will want to continue to play more during the preseason, but I think they keep his reps to about the same, couple of drives, and that's it. No matter how the game goes, I think they're going to stick to that pretty strictly. So if you see a line for Cam Ward, 75, 80, I would take the under on that. His line should stick around 40, and I don't think it should be any higher than that. And then as far as the pass catchers and the runners go, I don't have anything to say about any of that. Nothing stood out to me one way or the other. The Buccaneers, Kyle Trask played really, really well, which did kind of surprise me, but the Titans defense was not playing very well. The runners, they split up the work pretty much how I thought it was going to go. Sean Tucker is going to be like the preseason darling of this team. He's going to get all the work. So I think that we can continue to just target him. And then the wide receivers, I expect Emeka Egbuka to not get very much run in the preseason. Jalen McMillan probably not either. So they may catch a couple balls, but that's it. So I would stay away from their lines in the future. Jets and Packers. This was a fun one to watch, mainly for all the Justin Fields haters, because I'm kind of the opposite. I like Justin Fields. I think he does deserve to be a starting quarterback in the league, but I don't think he's necessarily an elite quarterback, and I don't think he's ever going to be an elite quarterback. But he can be a serviceable quarterback in a run-heavy scheme. So, for instance, kind of the scheme that the Eagles ran last year, where Jalen Hurts wasn't asked to throw very much and was efficient when he was asked to throw. So I think that can be a similar story here for Justin Fields if they build that kind of a team, which I think they have built that team. So I expect that the Jets are going to run a similar scheme to what we saw from the Eagles last year, where Justin Fields isn't throwing very much. They've got two, pretty good running backs, and then also the quarterback can run. So I expect a lot of groundwork out of the Jets. Now, having said that, I do like targeting the wide receivers on the Jets because these wide receivers are all fighting for spots here. So they should all be going over their lines, not necessarily with Justin Fields, but with Brady Cook, who I thought played pretty well. He exceeded my expectations. My expectations were pretty low for him, and he exceeded that. And then Adrian Martinez also played pretty well. So I would look to continue targeting those Jets wide receivers. As far as the running backs, Donovan Edwards is the only one I care about. I don't expect Braylon Allen to get much work anymore after this. And Breece Hall, I also don't expect him to get much work. On the Green Bay side of the ball, they were a freaking disaster. All of their wide receivers were hurt. And I told you in our video, our player props video, we took Savion Williams because I told you all the Green Bay wide receivers are hurt. So he's going to get a lot of work. But then he was hurt, so he didn't play. And it's probably good anyways because they had a horrible day passing. Jordan Love was horrible. Malik Willis was terrible. And so I think that they will be better in the future. And I think that we could target Savion Williams in the future. I wouldn't continue to target Matthew Golden. He's not going to get that much run in the preseason. He's going to play as much as Jordan Love plays probably, and not much more than that. All right, moving on to the Cardinals and the Chiefs. The Chiefs, they said they're going to play their starters. They usually do. And of course, just because of how the game went, a 1-yard touchdown pass to start the game, the starters didn't end up playing very much. And then Bailey Zappi was horrible. He was horrible. Arizona didn't look that great either, honestly. I was not impressed. And I don't even know who to target on this team. So I would stay away from the Arizona Cardinals and the Kansas City Chiefs. The only person I would even think about would be Carson Steele for his rushing. If we continue to get it in the teens, then I would maybe think about that. And then the Broncos and 49ers. The Broncos obviously had a great game. They were able to rush the ball. They were able to pass the ball. And the 49ers had a horrible game. Mac Jones did not play well. I do think that he can play better than that. But obviously, the 49ers are dealing with some wide receiver issues because we don't even know who's going to be starting for them on the field week 1. We know who their top guys are, obviously, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, and Brandon Ayuk, but we don't know how healthy they are. We've got contract disputes going on. And so these other wide receivers, like these backup wide receivers, they're not really fighting for a job, right? Because those 3 are going to start. But they're fighting for a roster spot for sure. And I think Mac Jones will play better. So what I would rather target here, rather than the wide receivers, is Mac Jones. So if they give us a low passing yard line for Mac Jones in the future, then I would take that. And that's probably what we'll do in week 2. The Dolphins here, bad. Now, I expected the Bears to kill the Dolphins, and that is not what happened. But we bet on Tyson Bagent, and we bet on Kyle Monangai, the running back, and they both went over their lines easily. So we will continue to look at them. But that was because they were playing against the Dolphins, who don't have any depth at defense. They were playing way better than I give them credit for to begin with. And then it all kind of fell apart, which is what I was more expecting. The Zach Wilson played horrible. I've been a Zach Wilson defender a little bit for the past couple of years when he was on the Jets, just because he was making me a ton of money. Like, I was betting on him almost every single week because they would set his passing yards line at like 165 or 170, and I would take it and he would cash for me. So I'm not defending him being a good quarterback. I'm just defending him being a good person to bet props on. Now, I did tell you in my videos, though, that I would not bet on the Dolphins in this particular matchup. And so I stayed away from them, and they did miss their lines. So Quinn Ewers did not hit his line either, and he played horrible. I just think this is mostly due to the Dolphins not being good. So what I expected already was that the Dolphins would not be good, and that seems to be the case. Ollie Gordon, the running back, is probably the only person I'm interested in here. He will continue to get most of the work in the preseason because, Achane will take some, Jalen Wright will take some, but they're starters, and then Ollie Gordon will get everything else. All right, the last game, Chargers-Saints, that was painful to watch. I just assumed Rattler would be bad, and he was. The only thing that looked good for him was his rushing, which it wasn't that good. The man needs to learn how to commit to his runs. He's a very hesitant runner. So you would watch him and he would, decide to run, but then he's like barely running. He's hesitantly running, and then he commits to it like halfway through the run. And I didn't like that. Even like partway through the run, he would look to pass when he already knows there's nothing there. He just needed to put his head down and get those first downs, and he did not do that. Tyler Shuck was not super impressive. Obviously, he went over his lines, and so he put up a big stat line. He had a really bad pick, and that can happen to anybody, but the Saints are going to be a miserable team this year in general, and we can expect whoever is starting at the Saints to throw a lot of interceptions this year, in my opinion. We're probably going to see all three of these guys at some point during the year. From a betting perspective, I don't want anyone on any of these teams. Or on the Saints. And then on the Chargers side of the ball, Trey Lance had a great day. It just wasn't through the air. He had a really good day on his legs. So we should expect Trey Lance to continue to be good in the preseason. I would like his rushing line. If we see it anywhere around 20 or less, then that's something to look at every single week. DJ Uiagalelei, which is my favorite name. I love that name. He had one really great pass. And so don't take too much, don't take much out of that. Obviously, Justin Herbert's going to be the starter here. Taylor Heineke and Trey Lance are clearly and firmly ahead of DJ. So I don't expect him to ever see the field in the regular season unless, something serious were to happen. So those are my takes from the preseason, guys. There's a couple of players that I called out that we want to keep an eye on. Keep an eye out for our player props videos. They'll probably come out. I mean, we're starting to get player props, but I might put out the first one like Wednesday or Thursday, just whenever we have enough props, maybe like at least 3 or 4 that I could justify putting them together in a video. Let me know what you think about any of this in the comments. I love to talk about football. Let me know if you think I'm wrong. Let me know if you think I'm right, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.